Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. We thought from a Poolbeg standpoint, we're coming towards the middle of the year, so a good time to reflect backwards on what we've achieved thus far this year, and obviously, importantly, looking forward, what the company has plans in the future. So again, greatly appreciate taking the time to join us here today, along with my colleague, David Allmond. So just to ground us for Poolbeg Pharma, for those unfamiliar, we are a leading biotech company. We're focused on developing therapeutics for significant unmet medical needs, and we'll go through in detail what we're striving for later on. I think we have a lot of positive news to share, to discuss, to give you an update on. But I think what's important is that the team that we built around Poolbeg, it really is setting us up for success. So as a very experienced team, we've successfully built 3 public life sciences companies and achieved multiple exits, even in the private sector. And more recently, I think very excitingly for the company Poolbeg, we brought in 3 colleagues over from Allmond Pharma. And again, for those who may not be in the know, our co-founder, Cathal Friel, was a co-founder of Allmond. And they started as a public company in 2016, and they exited last year, bought by an Italian company, Chiesi, for $1.48 billion. So very exciting track. And as you'll see, we're kind of orientating ourselves to kind of go down that similar route when we're looking at rare and orphan diseases. But it's a fantastic team that we have now around us. What we're doing right now is pivoting into near-term revenue generation, and that's looking to bring in programs that are generating revenue. And we're having some very exciting discussions around those aspects. And again, for in-house programs, we're looking for partnerships to drive those forward. We've always said that from a Poolbeg standpoint, we generate early human data and then partner. So we've got some very interesting discussions going on that front right now. From a pipeline standpoint, very exciting programs. Dave is going to speak at length about POLB 001 for cytokine release syndrome following cancer immunotherapies. Again, very exciting market. I think we're kind of a fast mover to get ourselves in that space there. Very excited where that will take us. We also have other programs in the background, an oral delivery technology. Many of you have heard of the GLP-1 drugs that are now being targeted and marketed for obesity, very large markets. So we've got an oral version of that I'll touch upon later on. And again, from our background or from our history in infectious diseases, we have some AI programs that we've generated some very interesting drug targets and repositioning drugs for both influenza and RSV. From a financial standpoint, we're in a very healthy cash position. As of last year, we had £12.2 million in the bank. That's kind of audited results. And again, as I mentioned, we're focused on near-term revenue generation. I do want to spend just a minute on our pipeline. Again, we've worked very well and very hard to kind of build this pipeline across various disease areas. I'll just touch upon these because, as I said, we're going to go into detail later on specifically, but just flagging POLB 001. We see this as a very large market, 10 billion market opportunity, and Dave will speak more in depthly to that later on. Again, the oral encapsulation technology, we see, again, moving that program forward, getting early clinical data. We're already talking to partners about when that clinical data comes in, about moving that forward from there. And I mentioned the AI programs, but just one more program to mention down the bottom. And again, Dave will speak to those. We've got an option agreement. We're doing diligence on a topical mucoadherent pentoxifylline drug. And this is for oral cankers, as they call them in the US, for Behçet's disease. These like mouth ulcers we're all familiar with. But again, a very significant unmet need. And we're doing diligence on that. And again, Dave will talk to that later on. But again, in the background too, we've raised some non-dilutive funding to push forward our oral vaccine program and have established a collaboration with a NASDAQ-listed company. So again, we're in a good shape when it comes to our pipeline and our robust cash position. And as I say, we've achieved a lot in this first 6 months or so of 2024, getting access to this Behçet's disease drug. And again, pushing forward POLB 001, got some very exciting preclinical data early this year. And I think importantly as well, we've got some patents granted in the US, which again kind of protects ourselves going forward. Again, happy to see Cathal step in further, assuming an executive chair role, again, rolling up the sleeves. And again, fantastic to have Cathal more present in the company. And as I said, a robust cash position. Very busy rest of year ahead of us. I think we're, as I mentioned, pushing the programs forward, looking for partnering, generating near-term revenues. So I think we're well positioned for future growth and value creation. So now I'm going to hand over to Dave to go through some of our programs, and I'll return at the end and to speak about other programs and a general wrap-up.
Thanks, Jeremy. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to talk to you about POLB 001, particularly in cancer immunotherapy-induced CRS. Before we get into any slides, though, I just want you to think about one important point, which is, drugs take time sometimes to find the right home. P38 MAP kinase inhibitors, this is an orally delivered P38 MAP kinase inhibitor, have been around a little while, but they were being developed in potentially for other conditions and hadn't found the right home. We think we've found a fantastic opportunity where the risk benefit for this asset will really play well in the cancer setting. And let me move forward to explain why. So you may be familiar with cytokine release syndrome, or you may have heard it by another name, cytokine storm, during the pandemic. You can see this with viruses like COVID-19 or influenza, where effectively the immune system is sort of spiraling out of control and in itself is causing harm when it's supposed to be doing good. CRS, though, is very common when you're trying to administer immunotherapies in cancer. These are breakthrough therapies, and actually this is somewhat the Achilles heel of those therapies because it requires hospitalization. And well over 70% of these patients will experience a cytokine storm during the initiation and administration of their immunotherapy, which is intended to be curative, and can end up in hospital really for quite significant periods of time while the CRS resolves. So it's really an undesirable or unwanted or rate limiting factor when delivering these therapeutics. There's a very limited number of therapies to tackle CRS. They're all interventional to come in while you're in hospital. You can have some treatments to try and get it under control. And really what we're talking about here with 001 is an oral preventative strategy to prevent the CRS from occurring in the first place and have these patients moving through the hospital much more efficiently, or hopefully actually even in an outpatient setting. The impact of this burgeoning area of cancer therapy is, if we estimate really by 2030, with the number of patients increasing year on year going through immunotherapy, if you had to treat just in the EU5 in the US, multiple thousands of patients accessing these therapies, costs of directly managing the CRS can be huge, well into the billions. And actually, therefore, not only do we have a value proposition here of preventing this problem, but we also have a hugely exciting health economic proposition if we're successful with this product. Just to reiterate, this is oral administration. Other therapies in this area tend to be IV. This is oral, which is very practical. And really, it's to try and enable the safer, broader use of these amazing therapeutics as they're coming through the pipeline. We're excited this year because we've done a lot of preclinical work previously, a very strong preclinical package, and we finished some additional animal work in a CRS model in humanized mouse models. And if you look at the charts down on the left-hand side of this chart, effectively what you're seeing, interferon and TNF-alpha, we're seeing two pro-inflammatory cytokines, the positive controls in red, and you can see a dose-dependent reduction in those two cytokines when administering 001 to these mice with a model of CRS. So that's not the first time we've seen that picture. If you look on the right-hand side of this chart, the data we presented at ASH in December in San Diego, a premier hematology conference, was actually from in-human data in normal volunteers, an LPS challenge study. Excellent safety tolerability. We inhibited the target, which is P38, which governs a lot of the control of these pro-inflammatory cytokines. We saw this dose-dependent response, as we're seeing here on that animal model. So the human results were very similar in that regard. And major reductions across all the inflammatory cytokines that we measured, IL-6, IL-10, IL-8, TNF-alpha, etc. So in other words, we saw exactly what we wanted to see. And here's some of those, just to give you a flavor without trawling through the whole study. But the TNF-alpha on the left, you can see the trend again from control right down through the dosing of POLB 001 back to a kind of a normalization of that pro-inflammatory cytokine. So we're not seeing ablation, where you're knocking it out, which you don't want to do because you still need immune function. We are seeing a normalization or bringing it back under control. IL-6 and IL-8, and there are others. So very consistent results with POLB 001 delivered twice daily orally. So let me talk about market opportunity and why we are particularly excited about the potential for this asset. Let's face it, before we talk about numbers, the most important thing in pharmaceutical development is the patient. And you can imagine if you're a patient going for curative therapy and you encounter CRS, you're stuck in hospital for 3 weeks whilst undergoing curative therapy with a serious side effect. That is not great for quality of life and for the patient, nor the health system. So those are the most important factors, but numbers are also important from an investor point of view and from our own investment point of view. And so look on the left-hand side, you'll be familiar with the explosive growth of monoclonal antibodies in the past. And the reason we put that chart in is just to say we see that kind of trajectory happening again with cancer immunotherapies, particularly bispecific antibodies and CAR T therapies, where they really are largely the future of cancer care, and they're already burgeoning. So estimated here at by 2030, $120 billion market. And that does not assume that there is an effective prophylaxis on the market. So that actually could be the thin end of the wedge. I took a conservative view of market opportunity for this asset based on its target product profile. In this calculation, I've only taken 2 key tumors where bispecifics and CAR T have already been successful to approval. That's multiple myeloma and diffuse large B-cell lymphoma or high-grade lymphoma. I didn't take account of ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, uveal melanomas, subsets of lung cancer. There are other approvals already with these immunotherapies. So I've taken a key proportion of the population. I've assumed here that these therapeutics get across all lines of those 2 diseases, which they will, because they're potentially curative out to 2030. And then it took a very conservative analog price of actually pegylated filgrastim on the low end of its cost, which is a preventative therapy for neutropenia associated, which is a white cell count controlled during chemotherapy, a very strong analog, but took the low end analog price. And that gets us to an estimate of that population alone by 2030 of 10 billion. That does not account for those other areas where these drugs are being developed, these therapeutics are being developed. And it does not account, for the move into beyond blood cancers into solid tumors, which are also well underway for development. So again, we see very significant opportunity for POLB 001. We went out to, and I'll summarize in a second, actually, some of their comments. We went out to key opinion leaders globally, in France, in the UK, in Canada, and in the United States. And we asked them the question, what is the challenge with CRS? What is the unmet need with CRS? And the answer they gave us actually was it's actually more of a system level unmet need. So if CRS occurs, they can intervene with existing therapeutics to try and get it under control as a secondary measure. But what they're really struggling with is that these patients getting it so frequently, they're stuck in hospital in major cancer centers where these beds are at a premium for other patients going through transplantation and other procedures in oncology. They want these patients either out of the hospital quickly and safely, or they want them dealt with as an outpatient in the first place. So if you plow through just in myeloma and diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, the whole EU5 and US population of those patients by 2030, the estimate being 500,000 of them, and of course it could be these numbers easily with the other indications, you will run into a bottleneck because cancer centers only have limited capacity. These patients will be swallowing up valuable beds. I've already explained to you that the cost offset, if you try to manage all the CRS associated with the delivery of that many of these therapeutics, you'd be running into an estimate of $5.5 billion of costs. So POLB 001 would not only deliver material value in the efficiency of the system to get these patients treated as hopefully outpatients and broader access to the therapeutics, but it would also provide a huge cost offset for the health system. And so we're really excited that this value proposition or the health economic case for 001 is powerful. So I said I'd come back to this, and this is a snippet, and I haven't been cherry picking. These were consistent across multiple key opinion leaders across 4 key markets across the world. We've picked out some examples. I'm going to just read 2 to you, but you can read the others for yourself. I think what Martin Kaiser said in the bottom right-hand side, he's the head of hematology at the Royal Marsden Hospital, which is the major cancer centre in the UK. If there was a therapy that was already delivered as the TPP we showed him, a whole lot of infrastructure would fall away, that big efficiency issue that I've highlighted. And then the other comment from the United States with Professor Morgan, bispecific antibodies will only be delivered in specialist cancer centers until there is a way to make them safer. POLB 001 could make them safe enough to extend bispecifics to a much wider patient population. And there were plenty more confirmatory comments from our other experts in the space. So it's not our opinion, it's actually been confirmed with our experts, key opinion leaders. And so in summary, we see that there's the potential for restricted access to the therapeutics due to capacity if we don't solve this problem. The prevention would enable that broader, safer use, and that we have a really attractive profile for this asset to take it forward into its clinical proof of concept. So topical PTX or pentoxifylline is a stroke of genius from one of the experts in the orphan space, Tim Cote, and I'll come on to that in a second. But this is really taking a drug that actually impacts the blood flow in the tissues and putting it into a formulation that would be potentially highly effective in the management of severe ulceration in Behçet's disease. And we're not talking of ulceration that you and I have an ulcer and we're uncomfortable, we put on some simple Bonjela or something and it goes away. We're talking about tens or more of ulcers in the mouth that could interfere with eating and drinking, or awful condition, severe morbidity. If you think about Behçet's, it's more common on the Silk Road, so right through the Middle East, through Turkey and across to the Far East. So what the underlying cause of this inflammatory disease is, it's a chronic disease. These patients live with lifelong symptoms, not least oral ulceration, but genital ulceration, and a whole range of other chronic symptoms. And current standard of care in this disease is inadequate in addressing the disease. It flares, actually. So what you're seeing is multiple flares in a year, sometimes 1 or 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5 flares, where the oral ulceration can be unbearable. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that Turkey has a very large population of these patients. And then even going through some of the Western countries, largely due to migration, you see USA, for example, with nearly 20,000 of these patients, and you see some significant populations across Europe and the Middle East. All of the markets I've put on here, by the way, if we're successful with this and we take the option for this asset, which we're working on as we speak to determine how to take this forward, have the potential for reimbursement and promoting this type of product. It's not just countries across the world where it's only the Western countries which would derive value. There are plenty of countries I've operated in personally on that list that we would love to bring such a breakthrough therapy to the patients who need it. So Tim, on the left-hand side, you may be familiar, he was the former director of the FDA Office of Orphan Products Development for many years. He implemented the Orphan Drugs Act in the United States, and he presided over no less than 1,400 orphan drug designations. So he knows a thing or two about orphan drugs. He had said to me that he had come across this concept in his early work, and he had said to himself, one day I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to make this happen for these patients. And after setting up his own consultancy as well, subsequent to the FDA and moving on from that business, he's done exactly that. And he's developed the formulation, which is muco-adherent, to make sure the drug can be delivered to the site where the ulceration occurs, run a phase 2 trial in Turkey, got the orphan drug designation and fast track designation, and it's positioned now for a 505(b)(2) approval pathway. If you're not familiar with that, that's a relatively rapid, less costly pathway to get to approval. And so now it really is for us as a company, we're going every day now through our piece of diligence around the 12-month option we have as to whether we advance this asset, take it on board and advance it into its phase 3. So Really exciting. You might think, well, actually, this is an orphan drug, and when some of our other assets, have been variable that generally presented. Don't forget, POLB 001. We're exploring that. We haven't, advanced, but it could go down the orphan road. We're exploring that concept, and going forward, we are strategically maneuvering towards more commercial opportunity rare and orphan diseases. So this is a really exciting potential step in that direction. From a trial perspective, the phase 2 in 2019, it was conducted in Turkey under an FDA IND, 41 patients. The standard of care is colchicine, so they were on colchicine, and then they were given standard of care plus the oral pentoxifylline. Treated for 14 days, applied to all the oral ulcers. It's a muco-adherent gel, so it will stick onto the right spot to deliver adequate dose. You couldn't just take this orally. There wouldn't be enough dose at the point it's needed. Primary endpoint, average index and ulcer area. Secondaries were pain and average number of daily ulcers. But let me show you the key data. So on the left-hand side, ulcer area, the black line on that chart is, if you like, the normal course with standard of care. So you can see slow healing and non-complete healing of the ulcer area over 2 weeks. But actually, with the pentoxifylline in a muco-adherent form, driving a much more rapid clearance of the ulceration to complete ulcer area resolution in 2 weeks. So powerful indicative phase 2 data that got us excited. On the right-hand side, as you would expect, pain scores were following suit. These are really painful when you have that many ulcers in your mouth, and they're clearing up, and you would expect pain scores to follow suit with the clearance of the ulceration. So I'm going to hand back to Jeremy for the next section, and then I think we're going to open up for a few of the questions at the end. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for that, Dave. And I will add just I was at the Bio conference recently in San Diego. This is where 20,000 people globally, in the industry show up and discuss, present, partner discussions. And I had a great discussion with Tim Cote, around this program. As Dave said, we're doing our diligence on it now, kind of understanding the market, understanding manufacturing what a phase 3 clinical trial will look like, for example. And so that's moving along well. The team are working hard at that. But Tim would be fantastic to work with, as Dave said, as former head of the US FDA Orphan Drug Designation Office. He's a fantastic guy to have on board. So we're kind of pushing forward with that. So as Dave said, what I'll do is the last few slides here. I don't want to leave time for questions. I just want to talk about our other 2 programs we have ongoing and then do a general wrap up. So yeah, we've talked before that we have an oral delivery platform. This is through partnerships with colleagues at AnaBio. So initially we started out as an oral vaccine program, and as I mentioned earlier on, has been funded by the Irish government. So that's moving along. We're a year or so into that, generating some interesting data. But also we've kind of partnered in on metabolic diseases and in particular GLP-1 receptor agonist, which I'll touch upon. But the world has kind of, I guess, woken up to GLP-1s. These are drugs that were initially indicated for diabetes. And then people realize they have some profound effect on weight loss, and giving them to obese patients, they're losing 20-24% of their body weight. And that has dramatic impacts then on cardiovascular health, on the vascular health in general. And, so they're seeing lots of benefits here. But the majority of these drugs are injected. They're injected kind of either daily or weekly, depending on the drug themselves. There's one program on the market that is given orally, but this is a very poor bioavailability, so the cost of goods are very high. So what we plan to do, again, as part of the Poolbeg mandate, is to run an early stage clinical trial to test the hypothesis whether this orally and this encapsulated GLP-1 peptide has the desired effect. What will that be to see that, number one, you take it orally, does it get into systemic circulation that you wanted to do, but then does it have an effect on glucose tolerance test? These are very short clinical trials. So we're working through that on the manufacturing. We're talking to the MHRA, the regulatory bodies. And again, as I say, the plan is to kind of push that forward and have that in the clinic before the end of this year. So making good progress on that. And again, if we see positive data from that, I think that will kind of open up a lot of interesting partnership discussions because people are looking for oral GLP-1 programs. In parallel, then we again use the same technology to collaborate with NASDAQ listed biopharma company who are interested in kind of improving a drug that they had, giving that orally. So again, we got some interesting data coming out of that, but it just showed the power of the platform, that other people are looking to work with us on that. And again, touched upon earlier on this oral vaccine program, harking back to our origins in infectious diseases. But again, if you can deliver a vaccine orally instead of giving it injectable, there's significant advantages, not just through those who are needle phobic, but of global distribution. So there's, again, multiple benefits from oral vaccines. So again, the team are making progress on that through collaborations, as I say. And then the final section, I'll talk about our AI programs. I think this is kind of something that's kind of catching the attention. I mean, AI, everyone is talking about it right now, but particularly in the infectious disease space, again, for where we spun out, we have this, I guess, what we would describe as the best disease progression data that's available on Earth. And this is through our human viral challenge studies that our colleagues at hVIVO had run. So this is a very large data set where healthy volunteers are deliberately infected with a virus, and they're monitored over the course of, say, 2 weeks, where the samples are taken twice a day and then analyzed for gene expressions, for viral load, for protein expression, signs and symptoms, and ultimately recovery. And that's the key aspect. So you're going from healthy to sick back to healthy, and what's going on in that disease progression from a gene expression standpoint. So we collaborated with 2 AI companies to look at that data. As I say, they were kind of really happy to work with us, and these are companies you'll see in the next slide have worked with big pharmas, but they were really impressed with the quality of the data that we had. And as I say, it's very unique. We are coming at this, you're familiar with vaccines, which are targeting the immune system to recognize a pathogen, a virus, for example. And then there's antivirals. These are, as an example, these will target the virus replication specifically. But we're coming at this from a different angle, which is the host response. So we want the patient's immune response to be fired up and ready to kind of tackle the virus or the pathogen, as it would in this case. So with our analysis with AI, we have come up with some very interesting targets and some interesting repurposing drugs that we can then move forward. So as I say, we're kind of in that very interesting space, which is new and novel, and particularly the application of AI is quite an interesting one. But I do want to speak briefly just on the collaboration partner. Cytoreason looked at our influenza data, and this is 130 volunteers. So you say a huge amount of data just from one single volunteer to understand what's going on there, particular kind of disease progression and recovery. But then we layer 130 total volunteers on top of that. So that gives us a fantastic picture of how, in general, the human body, the human immune system responds to the presence of virus. So again, they did a fantastic job. In a very short space of time, it's 14, 15 months, they're able to analyze all of this data set using their supercomputers and powerful algorithms, and identified several really novel targets that heretofore have not been associated with disease progression. So we feel there's something unique there. So again, talking to partners about moving those forward through collaborations. And then lastly, 13 Biotech looked at the RSV, the respiratory syncytial virus. Now, we tasked them with looking for existing drugs that we could then repurpose into treating RSV. And they came up with some interesting drugs, they said, that had already been through phase 1. So you could kind of move quickly into their analysis. And we did get some positive validation studies, from that collaboration. And again, a short space of time, roughly 12 months or so, they were able to analyze all the data and come up with drugs. So again, we see significant advantages here, looking to, again, partner with pharma's infectious disease focused companies to drive those forward. So the last slide, I'll just sum up, as I say, from an investment case, I think we're in a very good position. We have a fantastic team on board. We are, as I say, pivoting. We are looking at multiple companies that are kind of later stage, that have assets at later stage, and some good discussions going on. I will say, we've looked at companies or programs like this, one of which, we kind of came close to, but decided not to progress with further. We just thought it wasn't the right fit. But there are programs out there that we are targeting, and hoping in the near term we'll get access to those. As I say, kind of diligence and discussions are ongoing on multiple levels there. Internally, though, we're very excited about these internal programs. The 001 for CRS, as we said, that's a $10 billion market. And Dave spoke to the Behçet's disease drug. Say it's an option at this stage, but should we bring it in, I think that'll create very exciting market, for certainly something where there's a significant unmet need. And I said we're in a good, healthy cash position as well, from 12.2 million at the end of the year. So I think we'll sum it up there. We'll do want to leave it up for questions, but I think we're in a very exciting place right now. And I will say this from our discussions at Bio, I think there's really good interest in what we're doing, the programs we're pushing forward. And I say from that, looking forward to updating the markets as we progress those discussions. So we'll wrap it up there and leave time for some questions.
And we have a few questions. When will our lead product be sold or licensed? Are we talking weeks, months, or years?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Dave. Anyway, yeah, we have, as I say, we've updated the markets previously on calls like these. We have discussions that are ongoing with pharma. We don't as I say, put a timeline on that. It's kind of difficult. I think sometimes pharma, move kind of a slower pace than what they wanted to. I mean, the interest is definitely there. I think as Dave described, they see that our drug can help their drug is one way to put it, in that they can, if you remove that bottleneck that Dave spoke to, they can actually sell more drug themselves. So there is genuine interest. We had multiple discussions with farmers. They've committed, let's say, to give us drug for clinical trials. So timelines is always kind of an open question, and I can't, I'm not allowed from a regulatory standpoint to kind of put a time, a date, a month, etc. But let's suffice it to say that like the team is working hard to push that forward, to get those negotiations push forward to a conclusion. And obviously we'll update the market when that comes, but obviously we can't kind of project timelines on calls like this.
So when can we expect revenue streams to arrive?
I mean, I look at revenue streams, two fronts, one of which I talked about, the partnering of our existing pipelines. So again, reiterating discussions that are ongoing there to move that forward and update the markets. For bringing programs in, and we talked about this towards the end of last year, we've done diligence on, I hasten to add, dozens of different kind of companies and programs, and looking to see what to bring in. We are looking for that correct fit, program, and Dave can talk about his experience with marketing, commercializing products. But we're looking for programs rare and orphan disease, because that's the direction we're traveling right now. And there are several out there that I say we're doing diligence on ourselves. So again, timelines we won't speak to, but we got to get the right one. As I say, it's, you might be quick and bring something in that you're not happy with. So you got to get the right program in to take it to that next level. So Dave, do you want to add to that in particular?
I would just say that the description, if you like, of our target for for building late stage commercial assets, Jeremy's already mentioned. We seek to partner on some of the in-house assets, which can create non-dilutive income. We're working tirelessly on that, but we can't be specific on the date. But we're getting a lot of interest. The other side of the coin of looking to build commercial portfolio, you saw Silk Road today. We're evaluating that opportunity. That's a near-term opportunity, but we're also looking at opportunities which are in market with revenues today. We as a public company, we can't announce anything until a deal is done, and you'll be the first to know. But it is our stated goal to become an organic growth company, which is contributory for us to then be able to reinvest in our own development, etc. And that is something that we're moving at pace to make that happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, well said, Dave. And again, just to reiterate, I mentioned the Amrit story earlier on, and Dave himself was pivotal in Amrit's early successes in bringing programs in, bringing marketed programs in, and building from there. So
Jeremy, do you want me just to? I'll give one headline on that. I sold Amrit its first drug in Europe. It was doing around $5 million US, and we got that up to contribution, marginal contribution in Europe within 18 months. And because of the success in Europe, we then took out Agirion, took 2 drugs worldwide, got them going better worldwide, and then bought another US company. So in the space of 6 years, we got it up from 5 to 256 million of income, and Chiesi bought it for 1.48 billion total consideration. So that was pretty quick. I'd like to go quicker, wouldn't we all? But we really motored there with a relatively small commercial asset to get started. But getting started is the difficult bit. Then the momentum followed.
And as I said, we have the right team on board, and certainly with Dave's expertise, once we bring in the program, he'll drive it from there. Like lots of experience in large, biotech companies as well as small. But excited about that potential. But as I say, yes, just to reiterate, we are kind of looking at a lot of programs, and once we bring them in, we'll update the market.
Are the 2 interested parties that were said to be in the top 10 big pharma bracket still doing due diligence? And is one of them still aiming at partnering in CAR-T CRS, so preventing trial by the year's end?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Dave. Yeah, we are still, in discussions. That's moving forward. As I had meetings at Bio in San Diego. We had a call earlier this week on Monday with a broader clinical team, for one of the pharma companies. So again, moving those discussions forward. I say pharma are well known that, they don't they make decisions very deliberately. They don't move quickly. We're kind of a team like Poolbeg. We're quick and nimble, but pharma do kind of have to go through their layers. I don't want to say bureaucracy, but it's layers of approvals. But I think the strong point here is that from through these pharmas, we've gotten internal approval to be provided drug to run the clinical trial. And just to give a sense, that can, the cost of that drug alone for our trials is kind of upwards of, of 5 to 10 million, so they're making that level of drug, cost commitment. So of course, it's kind of bringing them forward and, as I say, talking more about 001 and the importance it could play for, let's say, a pipeline in general. So yeah, so I mean, discussions are still ongoing. Yes, to use Dave's words, we like them to move quicker, as we do, but happy with the direction of travel.
Jeremy, my previous manager used to say, David, just think about the 3 T's. And I said, what's that? He said, things take time. And I know, but I think that philosophy is right. We are patient, we're hungry, and we'll drive it as quick as we can.
Yeah, and I will say as well, so with the healthy cash position we're in, we're not. We want to get the right deal for Poolbeg, the right deal for our shareholders. So I think you don't want to rush into to do something foolish. But I say the direction of travel is in the right direction. So we're happy with that. But obviously we'd like it to be quicker as well. But we're getting there.
And what's the significance of the recent announcement of a grant received from the US Patent Office?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Dave. Yeah, I mean, I've said a few times on calls, there's kind of 3 things, 3 core aspects of the industry that you need to have success or a successful drug. Obviously, it's strong data, is kind of starting number 1. That's, treating a patient, etc. Secondly, Dave can attest to kind of a market, there's an unmet need, but there's a market then that would pay for that drug. But I think what's equally critical is intellectual property, and that's where you can kind of protect your inventions, you can protect your programs, you can protect your methods of treatments, for example. And so we were happy that, and again, these are not given lightly. There's strong justification, and there's so we've had review from the US Patent and Trademark Office. They granted a patent for treating hypercytokinemia, and that's a cytokine storm. Using POLB 001. This is our immunomodulator 2 patent application. So what that does then, it kind of, it strengthens our hand or strengthens our case. It adds value to the company, but it kind of protects that nobody else using a P38 MAP kinase inhibitor can come into that area and treat, as I say, cytokine storm or hypercytokinemia. So it gives us that kind of necessary exclusivity. So we were, and again, once patents are granted, there's lots of applications out there that might fall down, but once it's granted, it's kind of locked in. So you have, as I say, stronger kind of cards in your hand when it comes to number 1, pharma negotiations, and but number 2, then, as I say, creating an exclusive marketplace for your products and drugs, then that will generate revenue, and I say that exclusivity is key, and that'll helps as well with pricing. So that was a great patent granted, as I say. So it's quite hypercytokinemia is quite broad. There's many different causes of it. So as I say, we can go beyond. Or certain disease areas is quite broad. So yeah, we were happy that the US Patents and Trademark Office came back with that grant.
What's the time frame of our aspiration to get onto NASDAQ, and will it be reversing into an existing company with a listing that will get us there?
Yeah, I'll take that as well. Again, Dave, you're very good to join in. But what I will say is that we have a small but powerful team here where we have lots of things going on in parallel. So as I say, development of the key programs is moving along, and in parallel, then we're talking about partnering. But then we're looking for programs to bring in, but then we're looking for, and it could be, as I say, that kind of mutually inclusive, that a program or a partner that is already marketed, for example, by a company, and they're on NASDAQ, we could kind of merge with. So we've got multiple discussions going on multiple levels, and again, as I say, I can't speak to them more specifically than that. But as I said, there's a lot going on in parallel. So again, timing-wise, it's the same answer. Unfortunately, we can't kind of pick a week or a month, but we are moving in that right direction. And there are some very interesting companies out there. And as I say, I'll revert back to 2 weeks ago being in San Diego Bio, where we had multiple discussions with such companies. These are NASDAQ listed companies who are looking to partner, and they see what Poolbeg can bring to the table. Number 1, a European presence. They like that aspect. But number 2, they like our pipeline as well, and the kind of the combination, certainly from a rare and orphan disease standpoint. So there's some, there's some terrific companies out there that we're having, in-depth discussions with, let's say.
And I know you covered Behçet's, but somebody's asking how are things progressing on the Behçet's option?
Yeah, so we're moving expeditiously on that in a phased approach. So Jeremy already mentioned we're already making very good progress on thinking through clinical regulatory requirements. What would it take to get that product to approval in terms of time and investment, trials, trial design, etc. We're also making good progress on CMC assessment, so it could be robustly manufactured at scale. And if we tick those core boxes, right, approvability, cost, time to market, and the production at scale, we'll then, which I'm already starting to work on, but we'll just reaffirm market opportunity. So how exciting is the opportunity across different jurisdictions I presented and beyond? Which is a kind of final qualifier. We know there is a significant market opportunity, but we'll button that down. And then, we took a 12-month option because we didn't want to be up against the clock and run out of time, but we'll get through our work within that 12 months as soon as possible. I don't want it to take the whole 12 months, but it's good to have a window to get your diligence done properly, because at the end of the day, we need to make the right decision for the company and for our shareholders.
Yeah, that without question. Well said, Dave. Well said. As Dave said, it's not going to take the 12 months. And I will say from my meeting with Tim Cote in San Diego, he's keen and eager. I think he'd be a fantastic collaborator. He knows the space very, very well. He ran a phase 2 trial in Turkey. As you said, he's got strong contacts and connections over there. So it could be, and as I say, these are what we're working through. What that kind of like pivotal trial will look like, et cetera, and getting it done. But it's an unmet need. And I think there is a significant market there. So it's checking, what we've seen so far, checking important boxes.
Great. We do have a few more questions, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. So, Jeremy, if you'd like to give us a few closing remarks.
Again, just to reiterate, I appreciate people joining the call. Happy to give this kind of, let's say, mid-year update. Achieved a lot this year, but again, there's more to come. And as I say, I know some of the questions were terrific tonight. This afternoon, some of the answers, as I say, we have to be deliberately vague, but there is quite an amount going on in the background. And as I say, we'll update the markets as soon as we can. As Dave said, like, you'll be the first to know, but maybe second after the Poolbeg team. But as I say, there's lots going on in parallel, and a fantastic team to execute on that. So looking forward to keeping you all informed.